Hour number 3 on a Football Friday here on Mac and Cube. Going to go through and break down all the intriguing games here in the final hour of the show. If you want to go off the grid and do a random game, call in. We're absolutely open to entertaining any phone calls, 800-239-9569. If you want to talk about Auburn, the bye week, we can do that as well. It's no problem whatsoever. But we have a long slate of games to look forward to this weekend. And games that, even if it's not involving your team, matter. Games that would be very helpful. I guess helpful is probably the right word. Yeah, we'll keep it there. Games that would be really helpful for your team if an outcome were to go a certain way. For example, if you're Alabama, you know how big it would be for you, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. You realize how big it would be for you if Wisconsin were to somehow pull off the upset this weekend of Michigan? Not only does it get one less team out of the way, with Michigan, it would give them their second loss, and they still have a lot of tricky matchups coming up, including road trips to SC, of course, the game against Ohio State, a handful of others. But it strengthens Bama's resume. Bama beat Wisconsin, so a win for the Badgers there would be pretty significant. Real significant, frankly. Other games that might impact you without you really even knowing it. If Clemson can somehow get back on track, and everyone here is saying Clemson's dead, buried, and gone, right? Out of there. Not important. Non-factor. They're sitting there, have 3 losses already. Doesn't do anything for them. They got issues, right? Clemson has had problems. Well, if Clemson can somehow get back on track and say win out, and they finish the season 9-3, guess what that does? That helps LSU. Guess what a win against an LSU team that's been helped by Clemson does for Alabama? Well, it only strengthens LSU's resume, therefore making the win for Alabama over LSU, assuming they get it a month from now, that only benefits things. So in a roundabout way, 6 degrees of separation, a Clemson win this weekend helps you if you have the LSU Tigers on the schedule. We all know what this means for Texas, for example. Texas goes and gets a win this weekend. That's beneficial. Texas all of a sudden loses to, say, Oklahoma next week. I don't know if that'll happen or not. But Texas loses to Oklahoma next week. Oklahoma now has a win over Texas. Texas a win over Florida. Texas still sitting there probably in the top 15. Oklahoma only strengthens their resume. And guess what? Oklahoma comes to Tuscaloosa. That helps. Auburn already played Oklahoma. They lost, so it doesn't really help them much, but it maybe helps you alleviate the pain a little bit. Like the 6 degrees of separation have never been more significant here the last couple of years of college football. In the 12-team playoff era, the transitive property can be used, and it can be helpful. So very, very important. Let's go to Greg in Moundville. Greg, how are you, my friend?
Hey, Greg. I was wanting to get your thoughts on Virginia and Louisville. I know, Florida State beat Virginia. Lost to Virginia, which hurts Alabama. But, looking at Virginia's schedule, and it's pretty manageable. Outside of this Louisville game, could Virginia win out and make it to the ACC title game?
If you really look at it, it's very, very nice observation, I might add, Greg. Excellent stuff. That's what I love about our show. Like, we just had someone in Moundville call in asking us about Virginia football. Like, we have the most dialed in college football listeners in any terrestrial radio market. If you love college football, you're probably listening to us. The numbers back it up, and we are very, very grateful for that. But if you look at Virginia's schedule, it is fairly manageable. Now, if you look at if I'm going to be completely transparent, if you look at most ACC schedules off the cuff, they all look pretty manageable. Why? Because the ACC right now, it's not that it's bad. I think ACC's fine. I actually think the ACC is pretty good. I think Miami's a bit of a leg up in the ACC. But if you look at Virginia's schedule, for example, yes, they go to Louisville this weekend. I'll talk about that game in just a half second. They still have a road trip to Cal. Tough game. Cal's sneaky 4-1. They have a road trip to North Carolina, who I'm not a believer in whatsoever. They have a road trip to Duke. We told you all the time it's all about winning at home. Feel confident about them beating Washington State. Feel confident about them beating Wake at home. And feel pretty confident about them beating Virginia Tech at home. I think there's a real shot that Virginia could be sitting there at season's end with, I don't know, 2 or 3 conference losses. And does that get you in as the second place team? Because Miami is probably going to win the ACC in the regular season. You're going to be in the ACC championship game. Who's going to be that second team? Well, their one loss came against NC State in heartbreaking fashion on the road. But if they could potentially sit there at 10-2 with 2 losses in the ACC, 6-2, could that get them in? Perhaps. What's funny is that NC State game for Virginia does not count towards their conference record. Why? Because it was a non-conference game. Isn't that wild? So Virginia currently 2-0 in the ACC. So if they could finish somehow 6-2, I think they got a shot. For Georgia Tech's in that mix. Duke is currently undefeated right now in the ACC. Louisville's undefeated in the ACC. A few other teams that are as well. So we'll see how it all unfolds. But yeah, Virginia could be that team. However, they're losing this weekend. They're about a 6.5-point dog. I like Virginia's offense. I do. I think defensively, they have a couple challenges. Louisville's running backs are completely banged up. That's the one thing I'm concerned about. But I think Virginia, going against this Louisville defense, they're going to kind of have their hands full. This Louisville defense is pretty sporty. They can go. And I do think that the one area where I would have concerns if I'm Virginia is in the secondary. And Miller Moss and company, they can do it through the air. They really can. So I'll be very, very curious to see how that game goes. I lean Louisville in that game. I don't want to say I lean heavily towards Louisville, but it's definitely a 45-degree angle lean. If 90 degrees is all the way, because I'm laying flat on the ground in that direction, 45-degree angle is about where I'm at. It's kind of like Michael Jackson in the Smooth Criminal video. That's how much I'm leaning towards Louisville in this game. Let's go next to Dustin in Odenville. How are you, Dustin? How are you, my friend?
Hi, good morning, Greg. How you doing?
Morning, brother.
All right, first-time caller, long-time listener.
Oh, first time, long time. Thanks for calling, buddy.
That's right. Question for you. You know, Ty Simpson lately has just been on fire. And you was talking earlier this morning about, you know, how you kind of had to put yourself back in reality when you had a slump. Man, it's going to be hard to go week in, week out playing at the high level that he's playing at. You know, is that something, you know, Alabama fans probably need to be kind of prepared for? You know, you can't play at that high level every single week. What did you do, you know, to kind of correct yourself?
Well, the bye week was super helpful. Like, I kind of had to get back to the basics. Like, and here's what's funny. Like, right now, the way he's playing, as crazy as it sounds, Dustin, it is sustainable.
Right.
Like, it really is. It's actually very sustainable. And that sounds crazy because, like, sometimes, you know what's not sustainable? The way Jalen Milroe played. Like, run around, create, playoff schedule. Like, playing off schedule to me is really unsustainable. There's going to be a game or two in which they do a really good job of, for example, corralling you in the pocket and the offensive line doesn't have their best stuff. And they are going to, you know, you start running around and all of a sudden, like, they guess right. And all of a sudden you're not on the same page with your receivers in scramble drill. Like, to me, the guys that are playing efficient football from the pocket and getting it out quickly and getting it out on time in the direction of where it's supposed to go, that to me is very, very sustainable. It doesn't mean that he's going to be as lights out as he was last week, or as lights out as he was against Wisconsin, or as lights out as he was against the ULM. It might not mean that, but it's a very repeatable recipe when your receivers are creating the separation that they're creating and he's anticipating the throws the way he's anticipating. So, like I said.
And the only thing that makes me even halfway question that is just going against some big, beefy defenses every single week, you know, week in, week out. That's got to be a grind. You know, I never was a quarterback, but, you know, I just I see it hard to keep that same mentality and not let it get in your head of all the pressure.
Oh, it's pressure now. But here's what,
No doubt.
and we've kind of said this now for a couple weeks. Like, and maybe it will rise a little bit more as the season goes along. Of course, like it does. Every game gets a little tougher. But he's playing with a certain level of freedom right now, and a certain level of trust. And yes, there will be pressure, no doubt about it. But you know what I think will likely get better as the season goes along? Running the football. Why? Because the defensive lines that you're playing against in weeks 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, they're going to have attrition. Like the teams you're playing against in the first 5 or 6 weeks, when they're at full strength, are really good across, and that I'm saying that's from Vanderbilt all the way to South Carolina to Texas to Ohio State. You know whose defenses aren't as good as the season goes along? Everybody's. If you look statistically at defensive performance and the lack of depth that we now see across the country, defenses get worse as the season goes along. Why? Because they lose guys.
No.
And if you look at Bama, for example, last year, when they lost Deontay Lawson, that was a challenge, right? And the defense against Oklahoma didn't look great. And I think if you look at what the defense looked like week 1 without Tim Keenan, it was a challenge. Like his absence was notable. So when you are down a guy or two, it becomes really hard to sustain the level of defense that you've seen. So you'll see, watch this. You'll see over the next 6 or 7 weeks, the level of defense that we've seen in the first 5 weeks of the season, it's going to come back to earth a little bit because you're just not going to have the same personnel, and fatigue will be a factor. And I think that if you can kind of somehow manage the first 5 weeks of the season as a quarterback and play well, I think it is pretty sustainable. So I'm really optimistic. Terrific call. I'm really optimistic about what I've seen from Ty. What I'm most impressed with him, though, is just the young man's respect that he has for the game, the respect that he has for the opposition, the respect that he has for the position that he currently serves in as the quarterback of the Alabama Crimson Tide. It's a tremendous burden. It's the greatest burden, though, you could ever ask for. And as a young man from Martin, Tennessee, who grew up watching Southeastern Conference football, who grew up loving football at the college level, he understands what that position means, and he approaches it like a true pro. And there's a lot to appreciate and respect about that. And he does not take it for granted. And the staff 2 years ago told me he was the best guy, the most talented guy, but it just wasn't to be at that time. He wasn't ready mentally to shoulder that burden. He's ready now. And it's been really fun to watch. I couldn't be happier for him. Frankly, I will admit, one of my favorite players I've ever covered. And it's been 4 games. Just want the best for him. Really, really proud of that young man. Let's go to Don in Homewood. How are you, Don?
Hey, Greg. How are you, sir?
How are you, buddy?
I'm good, buddy. Hey, let's go on the other side of the state and talk about my struggles at quarterback. What do you think the problem is with our offense and Jackson Arnold? And do you think after the Georgia game, should we think about changing quarterbacks?
Good call, Don. I appreciate it. Look, I'm not there yet because I think Jackson Arnold's ability to break you down with his legs still exists. I still think that becomes very problematic. And for an offensive line that's struggling, they now need to adjust to maybe more call it and run it quarterback runs. And he's got to be more accurate on downfield throws. And he's got to cut it loose. And I don't care if he just heave a go ball, throw it. Like, go and let Cam Coleman make a play. Like, go and let your receivers, who are your best attribute on the entire roster, let them go and win the game for you. I think if he hits 2 or 3 more throws against Oklahoma, they win that game. That says an awful lot, by the way. 2 or 3 plays away from potentially win that game on the road against a really good, well-respected top 10 Oklahoma team and one of the best defenses in America. Why? Because your receivers are a matchup nightmare for everyone you play. So I think call it, run it, quarterback runs. Lean into that and hit on some shots downfield. Got to have it, got to do it. And if you can, you should be in really, really good shape. I am not pressing the panic button yet on Auburn. I'm not. I think there's enough good on the tape in certain areas that they can be okay. But this bye week could not come at a better time. They need to go back to the drawing board a little bit, figure out what they want their identity to be. And I think their identity is going to be best suited leaning on quarterback run game and shot plays downfield. Let's go to Tom in Demopolis. Tom, how are you, my friend?
I understand it's a college show, but I wanted to comment on former Bama quarterback Mac Jones having a career night last night. Threw for 342 yards, and almost all the starting receivers were out, and that's really exciting. And kudos to him. And I wanted to hear you guys' comments if y'all are aware of it.
Oh yeah, I watched the whole thing. Thanks for the call, Tom. What was scary, he went down and he grabbed that left knee at one point. Remember? There on the third down, he took a huge shot. I mean, he got absolutely smoked. Went down, grabbed that left knee, and he's like limping off the field. I'm like, oh no, of course. You know, he's playing great. He's in a great situation with one of the best play callers, one of the best schemers in the NFL, a guy that really understands that position. And it's like, finally, I think Mac is getting into a bit of a rhythm as a player. He's now made 3 starts. He's done a great job. And I thought he got hurt. You know, I was like, oh, I was just sick. So to see him get up and run off the field clapping his hands was like the biggest relief ever. I felt like Mac Jones' dad. Like, thank God. You know what I mean? Like, thank God. But I think he did a pretty dang good job last night. Super accurate, made a couple really nice throws downfield. He got hit a few times too hard. And it didn't impact his accuracy, didn't impact how quickly he was getting through this process. He's getting rid of the ball. I think he's in a really good situation. And I don't know if he'll be able to parlay this resurgence in San Francisco into a starting job somewhere else. I don't know that. I'm not as familiar with where the league is at. I don't know if he's going to be the next Sam Darnold that can revitalize his career after a disappointing start to his career. I want that badly for Mac. I really do. I just don't know where that's going to happen because, frankly, that's Brock Purdy's team, and he just signed a $250 million plus contract. So it's going to be his show. So this has been great for Mac to get some good reps on tape, and maybe he can parlay it into a Daniel Jones situation. Maybe he can parlay it into a Sam Darnold situation where, hey, it didn't work out at my first stop, but I can still play. And I'm hoping that's what happens for him. Let's go to Cowboy in Dallas. How are you, Cowboy?
How you doing, Greg and Cole? I kind of got a question here, and me and some friends of mine in Alabama and Atlanta, and I'm out here in Dallas. I've met you out here before at alumni stuff, but trying to figure out, Kalen DeBoer has beat these 3 Nick Saban guys, and he's 7-0 against them. Steve Sarkisian, Dan Lanning, more of a Kirby guy, and Kirby Smart. He's 7-0 against them. He schemes them to start the game, jumps them, gets out on them early, then they get back in the game, but they're fighting uphill and they make a mistake, and then they end up losing. But what sauce does he have to get them so discombobulated when these bozo coaches beat him? I'm not saying the coaches are bozos, but just not as elite thinking coaches as Kirby, Dan, and Steve Sarkisian are thought of across the country. And it's just perplexing to us. And you understand, I think, what I'm saying.
No, completely. I don't know if I'd go as far as to call them bozos like you said, but I understand completely the sentiment. Here's the thing that I think is great about Kalen. I think Kalen, the bigger the moment, the more laid back he feels. Bigger the moment, the more he just lets it fly. And it doesn't mean that he's not intense. The guy's a hyper competitor. I mean, hyper competitor. And I don't think people realize that because he's got such an easygoing demeanor. Y'all, this guy is an elite competitor. You know, he hit like 520 in high school baseball. Like, he was a high-level baseball player coming out of high school. High-level baseball player. The guy is a killer. He just isn't the killer in a traditional sense. And I think he is very, very good in managing the emotions of a game in which you got nothing to lose. I think the next step of his involvement and development as a head coach, and I think for everybody, and frankly for the team, is not to get tight at times when you're playing against other competition. I've noticed at least last year there were moments in which it just felt like it was very tight on the sideline. Everyone felt tight, like they were playing not to lose, as opposed to, hey, let's let it rip. Let's go out there and just let it rip. Let it fly. Against LSU, hey, on the road, let it fly today, boys. You know, play loose, play fun, and then just absolutely boat race LSU. At Washington, against Oregon twice, and Oregon had a vastly superior team as far as personnel is concerned. Let it fly today, boys. Got nothing to lose. Against Texas, you look at that Texas roster that he beat in the playoffs. It was ridiculous. Let it fly today, boys. Got nothing to lose. I think he's really, really, the bigger the moment, the more he is empowering the guys. And I think if you look at the Florida State game, there was a certain tightness on the sideline that you could just tell. The guys were just anxious and tight. And I think that's something that they have now addressed. They've now noticed that. They've made adjustments. They adjusted their snap counts. They adjusted their pregame or their pre-snap. They adjusted their pre-snap mechanisms against Georgia. And they did a lot of self-scout because, remember, it's been documented there's been some struggles on the road. And it started this year against Florida State. Well, guess what? Their approach in the pre-snap was very, very different against Georgia than it was against Florida State and against the teams they played last year on the road. Like, he's constantly evolving and becoming more familiar with the SEC, becoming more familiar with the venues in the SEC, what you can, what you can't do. And I think it's going to be really, really good as he continues to get more knowledge and gets more and more understanding of what this league is like and how to attack certain teams and tendencies of certain coaches and this and that and the other things. It's going to be really, really good. Very, very optimistic about his approach and how he deals with things. But there were definitely a couple times they got last year. But I think if you look at those games, they were kind of their own worst enemy on a handful of them. Whether it's pre-snap penalties, they have 15 penalties against Tennessee on the road. But then again, I also think last year's team, that's the anomaly year. Like we've talked about it. It's old news, not worth talking about anymore. I think they got the right guys now. The guys that are really in it for Bama. Feels that way, at least. And it felt that way in the offseason. That's why the Florida State game was so surprising. But I think they're in great shape moving forward. Just got to continue to piece it together. And, hey, last week was phenomenal, but it doesn't mean anything if you don't take care of business this week, right? So it'll be great. It'll be great to see what they do this week against Vandy because Vandy's a very, very good football team, a team that I have a ton of respect for, and an offense very challenging to play against. So we'll see how they respond. All right, when we come back, we're going to visit with Manny Navarro, talk a little Miami, Florida State next on Mac and Cube. Looking to turn your unworn jewelry into something valuable? Bring it to Bromberg's annual jewelry buying event. Yesterday was the first day. Today is the last day. It's at the Summit at Bromberg's. You can sell your diamonds, jewelry, watches, even silver flatware for immediate payment, or you get 120% of your offer in Bromberg store credit. With nearly 190 years of trusted expertise, Bromberg's makes the process easy, transparent, and secure. So make sure you go over there today. The annual jewelry buying event where you can sell all your great stuff and get better stuff from Bromberg. You can go see him at the Summit today. We welcome him in now. He's Manny Navarro. Does an outstanding job for The Athletic, one of my favorites. Also has the Wide Right pod, covers Miami football. And Manny, it's always great to have you, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Great to catch up with you again and talk about such a big game for Miami and Florida State.
I just love this rivalry. I don't know how you don't. It's one of the great rivalries in college football history. And Miami's been a juggernaut so far. Can't say it's a huge surprise, but the progress made defensively is remarkable. That to me is the biggest storyline in this game, is the progress that Miami's made defensively going against what I think is one of the more dangerous offenses they faced this year. So how do you think they'll stack up?
Yeah, it should be really, really interesting because the Hurricanes have done a terrific job slowing the run. And obviously that's what Gus Malzahn wants to do first is establish the run and, put pressure on this defense to sort of pick and choose when Tommy Castellanos decides to take off and run or get out of the pocket. So it's going to be an incredible matchup. I think, Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor have obviously been phenomenal in the pass rush, probably the best pass rushing duo in the country. But Florida State's first instinct is to run the football. So, and to get Castellanos, like I said, out of that pocket, get him on the move, allow him to make plays and put pressure on the defense. So, I think in this game, it's going to be really important for guys like Wesley Besaint, and some of the other linebackers for Miami to just do a good job wrapping up in space. And I think if they do that, this is a game that Miami should win because I think at the line of scrimmage, they're stronger than Florida State on both sides of the ball.
They are definitely the better football team, the more well-rounded football team, but this is the first time Miami's gotten into a hostile environment. Do you anticipate that being a factor?
Well, it should be, right? I mean, you've got some guys that haven't played in these kind of games yet. Certainly Malachi Toney, in terms of being on the road, this is the first time he's going on the road as a college freshman. He's Miami's best receiver. What's he going to look like, in an unfriendly environment? Is he going to be nervous? To this point, he hasn't shown any of that, right, against Notre Dame and Florida and some of the preseason top 25 teams. So I think that's certainly a question mark. I think, you have some guys in the secondary, some younger guys in the secondary that are playing a whole lot of football right now for Miami that, what's it going to be like when they've got to communicate on the back end? Are they going to be able to hear each other? So this is going to be a loud, fun environment, and communication is going to be key. But, Cristobal knows that. He knows how to prepare his team. They've been practicing with the war chant blaring in their ears all week long, I'm sure, and they should be ready for this environment.
Should be, as we visit with Manny Navarro, does a great job covering the Miami Hurricanes and all of college football on The Athletic. Carson Beck, I think, has been really, really good this year. Now, I know statistically speaking, it's not going to blow you away. But to me, I think he's back to kind of playing the way he played a couple of years ago. He's not trying to do too much. He's been effective when they've asked him to be effective. The offensive line's given him time. The couple picks that he has, it feels like it's because the offensive line gave up some immediate pressure. So is this sustainable from Carson Beck?
Yeah, that's the big question for me going into this game. I think if Carson Beck comes out and protects the football and isn't trying to make plays and trying to force the ball down the field, I think this is a game Miami should win because, again, the way they're able to control the line of scrimmage, they've been able to do it against Notre Dame, against Florida, and just run the football and sort of move the pile. I can totally see them doing the same thing against Florida State. Florida State's playing some really young defensive linemen in this game, freshmen who played a whole lot of snaps for them. So to me, does Beck just sort of get out of his element? Does he let maybe the showcase game on a Saturday night get to his head? I don't see that happening. He's been playing too much football for too long. He's played in too many of these big games. But I think if Carson Beck just kind of plays out of character, I think that's where Miami can get themselves into trouble because Florida State's a really good football team, and they're playing at home. They're excited about this game. This is a chance for them to beat a top 5 team and to sort of get back on their feet on the national stage after feeling like they were there in the early going of the season. So I think it's really going to come down to how Carson Beck plays in this game. If he's under control, if he's playing smart football, which he's done to this point, I think Miami probably wins this game.
Visiting with Manny Navarro does a great job on The Athletic. You can follow him at Manny_Navarro on X/Twitter/ whatever we're calling it now. Manny, looking at the Mario Cristobal conversation, I'm amazed at how people gravitate towards his missteps, whereas every other coach's missteps are like forgotten immediately. For whatever reason, his last forever. And guess what? Every coach in America has made a mistake or two that's led to their team being at a disadvantage in the game. It absolutely happens, and it's not the end of the world. Why are people so hard with Mario Cristobal and citing his failures and not acknowledging some of the incredible moments he's had in building this roster back to a national championship contender?
Yeah, I think it's the unfortunate deal for Miami in general, right? I mean, the last 20 years, the number one question I've gotten from everybody that's had me on a radio show is, when is the U back? Are they going to be back? And there's just like this anticipation of Miami finally looking like it used to, more than 20 years ago. And it's not an easy process to get back there, right? Mario had to completely flip this roster around from when he got here. I mean, the offensive and defensive lines look completely different in terms of just the size, speed, athleticism perspective. He's done a really good job in the portal identifying guys, but it takes time to get there. And look, Miami was 4-0 when they lost that game to Georgia Tech 2 years ago. Everybody was saying, hey, is the U back? Are they ready to go? And it was a really deflating loss for the program, right? I mean, you blow the game by not sort of running out the clock. And so Miami ends up finishing 7-6, and it's just, well, here's Miami. We're hearing all this hype once again about this program, and look what they just did. They're mediocre again, 7-6. But he was still far off from really tinkering with this roster and making it. I mean, Ruben Bain was a freshman on that team that went 7-6. Francis Marinoa was a true freshman starting on that team. It just takes time, and I know in today's era everybody wants everything to just happen quickly, but unfortunately for Mario, he's walked into a situation at Miami where it's been 20 years of this, where we've heard, hey, is the U back? And so I think he's just sort of treated the same way. Well, you guys aren't real. You're a bunch of pretenders. And so, it takes time to get to where they are. And I think they finally are at that point where the team and this roster really looks the way he wanted them to look.
It certainly feels like they're trending in that direction. Manny, when you look at the rest of the ACC right now, it's hard. If I'm looking at it from a Miami standpoint, it's hard for me to feel threatened, frankly, by anyone else in the league at this point. Like, I think if Miami loses a game in the ACC, it's probably going to be self-inflicted, with the one exception being this game against Florida State. I think this is a tough one. I think Florida State's pretty good. And while last week is going to be on everyone's mind, I think that's a very good football team across the board. This, to me, feels like the only hurdle for Miami at this point en route to what might be an undefeated regular season. This is the last ranked team on their schedule at the moment, even though I think Louisville will probably be ranked, but at that point, Miami will be coming off the bye. Who else can get Miami, I guess, if you will, if Florida State doesn't get them this weekend?
Yeah, that's a great question. I did my preseason predictions, and last year I predicted 10 wins. It's exactly where they got. This year I predicted 11-1, and I just feel in some way, shape, or form, this team could potentially lose a game on the road late in the season. Maybe it's because of injuries. Maybe it's because of a lack of focus. I kind of identified in the preseason SMU as a potential spot just because Rhett Lashley is such an excellent play caller. He's got a good quarterback in Kevin Jennings. I know that defense hasn't been very good. But I think Pittsburgh is another game you look at on a schedule. You say maybe that's a game that they drop. But you're right. I mean, if they get past Florida State this weekend, there's really no game left on the schedule where you're thinking, well, they can really lose that, right? I mean, I just don't see it. So Would I completely rule it out? No, because I know the history of this program. I know certainly saw what happened late last year, but this just feels like a different team, especially up front on defense. I think if that defensive line plays at that level the whole season, it's going to be really hard for anybody in the country to beat that.
It certainly feels that way. Manny, terrific stuff, man. As always, really appreciate your time and look forward to visiting again down the road.
Absolutely, Greg. Thanks for having me on.
All right, beautiful. Excellent. Manny Navarro joining us here from The Athletic. Does a great job covering all of college football, especially the Miami Hurricanes. All right, when we come back, we're going to do a rapid fire through all these games. Give you some picks, give you some things to consider, give you a couple keys next on Mac and Cube. Mac and Cube in the morning, 9:40 here as we get ready to put a bow on the third hour and start to move you ahead into what should be a terrific week 6. Look, Foo is doing it again, and this time it's massive. 50,000 square feet of premium Core-Tech flooring in stock at Shannara Flooring. Every plank comes with a 20 mil wear layer that's built to last and priced to move. No one in town has the Core-Tech that Foo has, and savings of 20 to 40%. It's a deal that you absolutely cannot touch. So remember Shannara Flooring. When you want Core-Tech, call who? Call Foo. Call them today at 205-518-6423. Or you can go online at fooandyou.com. All right, rapid fire. Going through some of these incredible games this weekend. Give you a little key for each. Does that sound good?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Damian, your thoughts quickly on all these as well. Let's fill it up. It starts 11 o'clock on ABC. It's the Georgia Bulldogs trying to get back on track against the Kentucky Wildcats. Georgia, a 19.5-point favorite. To me, it's about Georgia just protecting the football. I don't think Kentucky can score. I do think they have some big play potential. I do think Kentucky's defensive line can be disruptive in this game. But if Georgia keeps a clean sheet, doesn't turn the ball over, they should be able to win this game comfortably. Any questions or doubts about that outcome?
Nah, I think Georgia wants to get back on the winning side of things after what happened last week, and I just think Kentucky is that enemy. Number one, they know they have kept it close, but I don't think this is going to be one that's leaning more than Kentucky's favor. I think Georgia handles their business.
I wouldn't be that shocked if Kentucky covered. That'd probably be my lean if I had to play it, but I do think that game is just a tricky matchup for sure. I don't think it's going to be very high scoring. We'll go next, 11 a.m. ESPN2, Iowa State at Cincinnati. I'm telling you, the Cincinnati quarterback, Brendan Sorsby, is a dude now. He can go. Keep an eye on Cincinnati's injury report. Dante Corleone's the name you need to be looking for. He's the defensive tackle. If he's in, they win the game. He's that much of a difference maker. Cincy, currently a slight favorite, -2.5, at home at Nippert Stadium, hosting the 14th ranked Iowa State Cyclones. So be an upset in the AP poll, not an upset according to Vegas. We'll go next, 11 a.m. Fox. Wisconsin at Michigan. Michigan, a 17.5-point favorite. I'm telling you guys, I think Wisconsin can hang. They got to do a good job with ball control, and they have to be incredible against the run, and their offensive line has to hold up. But if they can run the football, they got the jet sweeps going, they get some perimeter runs, they can kind of soften that pass rush. If you get into obvious passing situations against Michigan, Wisconsin's dead. They have to stay on schedule because Michigan will dent the pocket and they'll collapse the pocket around whatever quarterback it is. I lean towards Wisconsin and the points here, but it's partly because I expect Wisconsin, who, by the way, has not yet let anyone they've played this year rush for over 75 yards in a game. Like, they are really good up front. So if they can just force Bryce Underwood to beat him on the perimeter, they got a shot. I think that game has a chance to be very, very competitive. Clemson taking on the North Carolina Tar Heels, 11 a.m. ESPN. I think Clemson's going to kill North Carolina. I know Clemson's 0-2 in the ACC, 1-3 overall. They're a 14-point favorite. I think North Carolina's got a whole host of issues. I think Clemson now after the bye week, Damian, I think this is the get-right recipe that Clemson needs.
Yep, I'm right there with you, brother. Coming off the bye week and everything that Clemson has been up until this point, I think they take their frustrations out on North Carolina this weekend too.
Also at 11 a.m. on ESPNU, Army heading to Protective to take on the UAB Blazers. Army right now is 6.5-point favorite. I'll take UAB in that one. Army's been a little bit uncharacteristically unsound. Always very difficult to play against naturally, and it'll be a great challenge for the Blazers, but I would not be that surprised if they pulled it off at home. Just got to score. They got to use their possessions wisely, and every time they have the ball, they got to have points on the board because they can grind you out, and that'll be a tough one. Penn State traveling to UCLA. I haven't heard any complaints from James Franklin this year about traveling to Los Angeles. Last year, it was like planes, trains, and automobiles when they had to go to LA and play USC in the Coliseum. Now they're going to play an 0-4 UCLA team that is on an interim coach. And I think Penn State is going to absolutely destroy UCLA.
I'm with you.
I think UCLA is among the worst P5 schools in the country right now. I don't like the matchup for them. Not with what Penn State will have defensively. 2:30 Central Time on ESPN. The Texas Longhorns travel to the Swamp, Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, Gainesville, Florida. The Texas Longhorns have struggled offensively. It's looked okay at times, but most of the time it hasn't been great. Is this the get-right recipe? I don't know. Check out Florida's injury report. A couple of big absences along the defensive front. Caleb Banks, defensive tackle. You also have LJ McCray, great edge defender. Those guys both out in this game. They also are without one of their top corners. This could be a tough one for Florida. It's all about turnovers. If Florida turns the ball over, they have no shot. If they keep a clean sheet and somehow find a way to create a little balance, it could be interesting. Texas is not a team that gives up a lot of big plays defensively. Florida's a team that in the past, when they've been dangerous, they've thrived in giving up those big plays. I don't think it's a good matchup for Florida. I like the Longhorns here in this one. I just not super optimistic about Florida being able to score and manufacture explosives against a team that doesn't give them up. So I'll take Texas. I'll lay the points.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it'll probably be a sloppy game just because of what Texas has done up until this point. I know you beat up on Sam Houston State, but I mean, I also saw New Mexico State beat the brakes off of them last night as well. So I think that while the confidence may be there, it may still be a sloppy, not so pretty game. Just think about how much we anticipated this matchup going into the season. Just, okay, if Florida doesn't necessarily throw up on themselves to start it off, now this game has kind of lost a little bit of its luster, but I do think Texas wins it. It just may not be the prettiest of matchups.
Hard to push back with any of that. That thing's going to be hideous, but it's going to be fun to watch. 2:30 on NBC/Peacock. Notre Dame hosts the Boise State Broncos. Notre Dame trying to claw their way out of an 0-2 hole. Boise's sitting at 3-1, have won 3 in a row after losing to USF in the opener. Notre Dame right now a 20.5-point favorite. I think Boise will hang. I really do. I think Boise will hang. I don't know if Boise will be able to manufacture enough points, but I do think they'll hang. So I will take the points in that one. Virginia against Louisville. I already told you I like Louisville in that matchup. That's a 2:30 on ESPN2. I also, in that 2:30 window, like Washington traveling to Maryland. Maryland's 4-0, quietly undefeated. Washington's got too much firepower. I don't see it. Not at this point. I also know that the fire here in Alabama, the heat and humidity, can be brutal. Don't let it affect your home. Keep your family and home comfortable with an affordable Trane cooling system. They've been recognized as America's most trusted brand 11 consecutive years, and they're the official cooling partner here at Jocks. Find a comfort specialist near you at Trane.com. If you missed our breakdowns earlier of Bama Vandy, go back, download the podcast, wherever you get the podcast. When we come back, we'll do a couple games in the night slate, tell you our TD's Fine Furniture Super Sofa game of the weekend. Talked a little Miami, Florida State. We talked a little Texas Tech, Houston. All those games are in the nightcap. We'll go into them a little bit more here in just a moment. Before we do, I'm going to tell you about ProLift Garage Doors. ProLift Garage Doors, locally owned and operated. They're a community-based company, over 200 5-star reviews. Mike here locally and Jeffrey down in Baldwin County do a great job. They work on existing garage doors for repairs or can install new ones. There's no service call fees. You only pay for the work, not the visit. And they service all brands of garage doors. You can upgrade your appearance of your home with brand new garage doors, garage door opener repair, replacement, installation. So if you got unusual noises, slow response times, vibration, shaking, call for a maintenance service. You can go and check them out on their website to find the number that would be most applicable to you. Go to proliftdoors.com. That's proliftdoors.com. ProLift Garage Doors, lifting your expectations. All right, when we come back, put a bow on the show and give you the games in the night window next on Mac and Q.
And speaking of Alabama, we know they're taking on Vanderbilt, but Jocks and Total Sports Travel are giving round-trip airfare, a 2-night stay at the Ryder Hotel in Charleston, 2 tickets to Saturday's game, and transportation to and from the word TIDE, T-I-D-E, to 205-834-9450 to enter. Don't miss your shot at the ultimate game day experience, courtesy of Total Sports.
Final segment of the week here, McElroy, Cubelic in the morning, and like we always do here on the final segment, we do our TD's Fine Furniture Super Sofa Game of the Weekend. Say, Bear, let's kick it off.
Absolutely, and want to remind you that you can find your super sofa or furniture for the entire home at TD's Fine Furniture. The store is the size of 2 football fields, so there's plenty to choose from at TD's Fine Furniture in Summerton, Greg.
All right, Damian, you're up first. Where are we going?
I know you're going to take your game because you're an Alabama homer, but I'm going to our co-host, our partner in crime, Cole Cubelic. He's going to be on the sideline for Texas A&M and Mississippi State at 6:30 on the SEC Network. Can Mississippi State right the ship? Can they pull off the upset? Is Texas A&M for real? Who knows? But that is my TD's Fine Furniture Super Sofa Game of the weekend.
Great stuff. Say, Bear, where are you going?
Ooh, I'll take the easy one then. I will take Miami, Florida State. It shows it's a top 20 matchup, but Florida State kind of dropped the ball last week. It really should be a top 10. 6:30 ABC, Miami at Florida State. I think the Noles get this game. Either way, it's going to be a fun and exciting game. Give me Miami, Florida State, 6:30 ABC is my TD's Fine Furniture Super Sofa Game of the weekend.
Let's talk about that game first before I give you mine. I think this game really comes down to 2 players. Very simple. Deuce Robinson, who you might not know who that is, or you might not remember who that is, but he's the 6'6", 225-pound wide receiver for the Florida State Seminoles. The one part of Miami's team that is yet to be really tested are their corners. And I don't know if they're good. I don't know if they're average. I don't know if they're elite. I don't know where they're at. They haven't really been tested. And I think that Deuce Robinson is among the premier wideouts in the entire country. The guy has top-end speed. He's great. So if Deuce Robinson can go off and Thomas Castellanos can go off, I think Florida State can pull the upset. I think they will go off. However, Miami will not relinquish control of this game. I think they win it, but I think they win it by a field goal. I'll take Florida State in the points in that one. And then lastly, Texas Tech and Houston, another good one. I like Texas Tech in that one. They're top 10 team, I think. I think they're the real deal. We'll keep an eye on that. My TD Super Sofa Fine Furniture Super Sofa Game of the weekend. Bama Vandy, 2:30 ABC, revenge game for the Tide and validation opportunity for the Commodores. I know you guys will be watching with us. Looking forward to being on the call alongside Sean McDonough and Molly McGrath. For all of us here at Mac and Cube, for Damian, for Saybear, and for the Cube himself, I'm Greg. We hope you guys have a terrific day. 3-Man Front is next. Enjoy week 6, everybody. Talk to you Monday.